You Are Eating an Orange, You Are Naked, which was shortlisted for the 2021 Amazon.ca First Novel Award and the 2021 Governor General's Award for English Language Fiction. His second and most recent novel, Batshit Seven, is a finalist for the 2024 Atwood Gibson Writers Trust Fiction Prize, whose winner will be announced on Tuesday. We are anxiously awaiting, we are all rooting for you. Tuesday the 19th, I should say. So everybody please give a nice big round of applause for Aaron Tang.
Well, thank you everybody for coming on Sunday afternoon during Taylor Swift weekend. I know we have finals coming up too. So yeah, I'm based in Hong Kong and Shenzhen right now, and I had the chance to come back for the awards. So thank you so much for inviting me. Yeah, I haven't had a chance to tour Batshit Seven much other than in East Asia, so this would be my first kind of in-person talk. So thank you so much for being here. I'm gonna do a quick reading and talk, and then I think we'll just keep it kind of casual, and we can have a conversation about the book or anything about literature. Yeah, so I'm gonna read a little bit from my first novel, You Are Eating an Orange, You Are Naked. This is described as kind of like a trans-Asian novel about diasporic people who are moving around to different places, moving between spaces and languages as well. So one of the things that I do in my writing is I take a lot of ideas from the idea of trans-languaging in linguistics, which is basically like there's no original language and there's no such thing as a monolingual person. Because when we're speaking, we're also using other methods of communication, like I'm moving my hands, or we create eye contact. So there's no monolingual person. So if there's no monolingual person, if a person is bilingual or trilingual, multilingual, then their thoughts, their ideas would not be kind of articulated in the language. And in the form of a novel, when you're writing about a thing through a character who's being immersed in different kind of cultures, naturally the voice would also encompass different words. So because my Mandarin is not great, but I'm quite good at Cantonese, my narrator thinks also in Cantonese. So here's an example of that from Lanterns and Letters. The words koi and li make up the term concept. Koi by itself means approximate or in general, and li means thought or idea. But it can also mean read or recite. When put together, koi li, to me at least, means approximately an idea, or not quite an idea yet. So these kind of little terms that are in the narrator's head kind of piece together different English meanings that like help him articulate his feelings in that moment more than any like one single language could. And so through this kind of trans-languaging in the narration, I try to capture kind of the affects of how it's like to be a diasporic or a displaced person in contemporary times. Another thing that I do in this is that contemporary narratives about two people traveling in like maybe 2019, 2020, they're very young, they're in grad school. There's like a grad school research bro and his girlfriend traveling to different places. And then so these kind of travel stories and love stories and dialogue between the two are juxtaposed against folk tales. A lot of them Chinese, some of them Japanese. And these folk tales are really not explained as to why they're put together, except like these are folk tales that the narrator had memorized. And so during their relationship, he uses these folk tales to try to capture how kind of the relationship is like or how he feels in the moment. So if you're like philosophy or whatnot, might have heard of in the affect, there's the idea of the historical presence and the historical present, where like all of history is also kind of part of the now. And then that's why when we're living in a moment, we're also feeling everything that had happened before. So one of my chapters, it's called Kitchen God. This is when the character is thinking about the childhood that he had. I'm going to read just a little bit from here. Once there was a lord who loved to eat. He sometimes left this place to find a few flavors, One day, from far away, he smelled a smell like none other. He came to the house of a peasant woman. He begged to taste her food. She gave him some sugar cakes. He ate all of them. He wanted more. Peasant, that is all I have. Lord, come with me. Peasant, where? Lord, to my palace, where you will bake for me. Peasant, why? Lord, because I like your cakes. Peasant, I will not come with you. Lord, but I am a lord. Peasant, I will not come with you. Then I will hit you. The peasant had magical powers. She slapped the lord, and the force threw him against the wall. The lord was stuck on the wall. The peasant woman placed a curse upon him. He was to stay on the wall and watch other people eat forever. So, and then the lord is just on the wall, and it became like the kitchen god. So it's then said in the folklore that the kitchen god is like watching after you. So if you waste food, the kitchen god is watching, and that's not good, and then you'll be punished one day. And then and then the child becomes really into Japanese rice and like sushi rice, and then he starts thinking, oh no, is the kitchen god a nationalist? Would he get mad if I eat sushi rice? Like, is he still like mad about the war? But it's like early 2000s, and then so what he does, this child is, he goes like the character Rice. I discovered the Japanese character for rice, and it has the meaning the root of life. The Chinese character for rice is also the same, which in Cantonese can mean wealth. Rice is nationalism, rice is the root of life, rice is wealth. So what he decided to do is that to deal with this historical presence, he starts throwing rice out the window, just from the kitchen, and then his mom gets mad at him, and then he gets hit, just like the Lord. So here's a kind of humorous way to bring back the historical present. It's a different narrative that informed the present. In this book. So this is You Are Using an Orange, You're Naked. Well, it's also being made into it's getting money to be made into a film right now, which is, we'll see what happens. And then we have, and then Batshit Seven is my second novel. Sorry, I actually don't have a copy, but I have it on my phone. Oh, thank you so much. So Batshit Seven is set in 2019-2020 about an international student who studied in Canada for around 7 years, and during COVID dropped out of his MFA in creative writing and decided to return to Hong Kong. And he has a background, he went to UofT and has a background in theater studies. Of course, going back to Hong Kong, finance, capital, there's no job for him. And so he becomes an ESL instructor. But he hates it because he was trained in critical theory, and he thought that, this is just like helping institutions do like soft power colonizing, and he really hates himself for that. So this is kind of a piece of kind of political satire where this person like goes through, like tries to like assimilate, but like can't really, and like his mental health is not great, and it creates for some like pretty funny moments when it comes to the translanguaging as well. The other thing with this book is I have QR codes inside. So in the footnotes, you can see that you can scan this, and then it'll take you to stuff like a YouTube video, a McDonald's ad. So what happens is this character is always constipated because he's not exercising, he's depressed, he's not sleeping well, and well, when he's spending a lot of time on the toilet, he would go like scroll his phone and watch a YouTube video, and then he'll get really triggered. And so you get to watch it with him if you scan the code. There's a spot here on page 37 where the kind of translanguaging happens again, but this one is a bit more graphic, I guess. It's funny too. So it's about constipation. Glue is. Oh, let me give you some context. So before this, Glue is my main character's name. His full name is Glenn Wu, but people call him Glue. And in the beginning of the novel, you have he has this like kind of situationship with with another person, and then she kind of goes like, I stole something from you, but doesn't really tell him what it is. It's kind of metaphor for politics, whatnot. Yeah, and so he's really confused thinking about what she stole, but he's also a little horny. So blue is hard. Constipation, arousal, confusion, a looming sense of depression, and a vague sense of loss are coming together. Being bay is constipation. Being on its own means easy, informal, ordinary, and comfort. Bay, on the other hand, means secret. The words being bay describe this moment better than any English word blue knows. He stands up and ejaculates into some toilet paper and approaches something like a state of post-nut clarity. There is no point waiting to hear back from the school he interviewed for. He knows he won't get the job. Blue considers becoming an ESL instructor. Teaching ESL is as stable as a career someone like you can have, Blue remembers a FaceTime conversation he had with his mother earlier in the week. Blue's mom calls this Maase Lokdeha, direct translation, when a horse dies, walk on your feet, a more utilitarian way of saying suck it up. I mean, you've never had a full-time job, it's about time. So from this moment after he releases himself, he starts taking online courses to become an ESL instructor. And then a series of things happen, the situationship continues, and then he eventually does become an ESL instructor. But then he almost quits right away because a family, his brother-in-law, kind of sees an opportunity. It's 2020 in Hong Kong. There's a protest and a lot of people are thinking of leaving. So this kind of opportunistic brother-in-law decides to start like an immigration consultancy. So this is the best time to do immigration consultancy, and starts to assimilate Blue even more into the kind of colonial activities that are what passes as okay, but he's against, but he's also okay with. So these kind of conflicting kind of power dynamics within Blue as a character, he kind of like gives up. And then he receives an email towards the end from a former professor of his, asking him to contribute 150 words about language. And he remembered that he was quite good when he was in grad school before he dropped out. And he remembered that he wanted to be like a theater artist, and he remembered that he wanted to teach kids theater and acting. But at this point, he could no longer write anything. He had assimilated too much. So the narrator actually comes in and writes it for Blue. This is called language learners. Every motion is a gesture. You say this about rain in films by Ozu. A gesture's meaning comes from the response it elicits. When you respond to a gesture, the meaning of your response is sent simultaneously to the preceding gesture and the gestures that come after. Everything we do is in dialogue with something else, but AI systems struggle to understand this outside the game of Go, where all the rules are set. So I resort to asking my students to close their eyes. Listen to the sounds around you, I say. Think of all noises as gestures and respond to them with gestures of your own. But they don't move. One breath after another, the classroom's breathing becomes heavier and heavier. Each breath, now a response to the one that came before, gives meaning to the ones that come after. An organism is formed. That's it. Thank you. Yeah. Let's talk.
I was going to ask, you published 2 novels, obviously both of which have been very successful. Could you give us an idea of how it has felt from like the timeline between publishing your first novel to now being 2 days out from the Atwood Gibson Award and potentially, hopefully, winning?
I'm just honored to be there, and I love all the other writers who are involved in it, so I'm not really thinking about that, but thank you so much. But my first book is actually my master's thesis, and I had really great supervisors that were working with me, the nonfiction writer Keith McClare, and from there this was kind of like an experimental form. Like it's short stories. It doesn't really come together until the last chapter that wraps the novel together. And so this kind of episodic mode of writing was not really usual. And so I'm kind of surprised. that the publisher, Bohug, they're great and they're really invested in publishing more experimental types of writing. So from there, they were like, this is completely fine, you can do, we'll do this with you. And then I wasn't really expecting anything. I was just happy that I got picked up. And then the process took like 2 years, and then in 2020 it finally came out. And it was right during COVID. So again, I did all of my press and interviews online through Zoom. I went to a signing with a mask on, nobody was there. They just put it inside of the room. People picked up their copies. But it was it was alright. I feel like during that time and when I was working at Batsh, it was also during COVID. It felt very much like, oh, I get to work on writing during this time. It just feels kind of like I feel kind of lucky. And so I just kept doing it, and then whatever came after, I didn't really think about it until when it actually happened. So yeah, that's in a way nothing changed. I think I still approach it the same way.
I was also going to ask, you mentioned that You Were Eating an Orange, You Are Naked is currently in the process of becoming a film, getting the funding for that. Do you have any idea?
Can we talk about this? Okay. Sorry.
Do you have any idea how much input you'll be able to have on the production? I mean, obviously it's based on your book, but some TV shows like to take what's written and run away with it.
Yeah, I sold the rights to a director-writer, and she had made some incredible films before, so I'm okay with just having her write the screenplay and make the necessary changes. We do communicate, but I just trust her on this. So I don't have much of an input on my bunch. I'm okay with that. Sometimes when you finish writing a thing, you just kind of need to let it go and see what happens. Yeah.
Sorry, I have a form of questions from the club members.
I think we do have a question.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry. I was wondering, Aaron, as an experimental writer, are there other writers who you read kind of call it the experimental genre or the push boundaries that you don't think most people are aware of?
I think, we were just talking about Ian Williams, who teaches here. I think Reproductions by Ian Williams is a good example of something really episodic, kind of repetitive. Feels like poetry sometimes, but it's still kind of a novel, and the form of it is to kind of break down what is, the book is about how family is a social construct, and then history kind of repeats but in different ways. And then the prose themselves follow that kind of experimentation of these concepts. So I think there are quite a few Canadian authors that do that. Candicia Lubrin is another one who does it in her, also for the Atwood Prize Code Noir, where the prose is juxtaposed against an article from Code Noir by Louis XIV about how back then the French needed to, the colonizers needed to treat slaves, and then there's no direct relation between the article and the story, but then when they're put together, again you feel this the historical presence of the prose in such clarity that you wouldn't kind of understand if you had read either on their own, right? So yeah, these are some off the top of my head, but I do get a lot of the humor from contemporary Japanese and Chinese literature. So Go Hanki, Gao Zhenjian, kind of surreal contemporary French Chinese writer, Soul Mountain by him, and quite like Han Kang, though she recently won the Nobel Prize, South Korean author. Yeah, it's experimental in a very different way. She makes you feel like language doesn't matter after having read a book, which is kind of interesting. You feel the tension between two characters, but they never talk. but then because they're both narrated from like the interiority of the character, and then she positions the reader like right in the middle of that. In a way, it's really brave because she kind of gives the reader the trust to make a moral judgment of what goes on here. And then in the end, one character gets mad at the other, but they never talk. But then you kind of understand, and that understanding is beyond what's directly articulated in language. And that's kind of the book is called Greek Lesson. It's about a South Korean woman who's mute, and then she goes to learn Greek and starts writing poetry in ancient Greek. And then from the perspective of the instructor, it's like, what is going on here? Why is this woman doing that? And you get internally what's happening for both of them, but they never talk. And then the relationship falls apart, but you understand, but they still never talk. Right? So things like this, that experiments, use form to experiment with the concept that they're experimenting, kind of like the experimental writers that I kind of look up to. Yeah. Thank you for the question.
Your website and then having a link to the next
Yeah.
thing? Smart.
Yes, that was the publisher was really adamant about like it's your website, we're not responsible for it. Which is great, I understand. And I would prefer it to be the one hosting the codes. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I was also going to say, both of these texts are about like Hong Kong Canadians, and very much about the diaspora of the kind of dual identity.
Yes.
I guess how do you keep your characters separate from yourself and separate from like each other, I guess?
That's an interesting question. There's a lot of people who are, there's this term autofiction, right? Basically you're writing fiction based on who you are, and the character has the same name, the same job, but then it's of course not really the character, but most of it is the character. So how do you make that distinction, and is that okay? So autofiction is often kind of critiqued for like blurring the boundary between like reality and fiction, because that might be a problem, because a biography or a memoir is more facts, but autofiction it's not objective, and it concerns the self so much that people maybe sometimes see it as narcissistic. But at the same time, autofiction allows for a kind of honesty that a biography or a memoir does not have, because in autofiction, a writer often needs to like be really brutally honest about certain feelings or certain moments in their past that they need to confront through the writing, right? So I always think about the post-war Japanese author Osamu Dazai is no longer human, where it's clearly known that this man has gone through the war and did these things, and then he's writing about it in such a self-deprecating and honest way that you're like, writing for you, it's a mode of confession, right? It's because you can write that you can be so honest with yourself, and I try my best to do that, but I think I'm still in the process. Mackenzie Ward, who's like a scholar of kind of, she writes autocritical theory, which is also a big field, and she says that it's autofiction is about the process of creating the self. So there's absolutely no like self that's like complete form. It's constantly being constructed, and autofiction is a mode that allows for that kind of construction.
Interesting.
Hi.
Hi. Okay, I guess this might be a big-ish question, but what was kind of the inciting, I guess, inspiration for your first novel?
For my first one.
And yeah, and also just like did the form of it, like the sort of episodic nature of it, like was that something you already had in mind when you started writing it, or was it kind of something that just kind of felt natural to like your idea of West Bay?
Yeah. Oh, interesting question. So when you're in a MFA creative writing program, you have to defend your thesis. So you have to, why every decision was made needs to be kind of justified. which is not really a helpful process sometimes because I'm like it doesn't what it do to the reader matter more than why I made that decision. But so one of the reasons why I did that as a defense academically was because the hero journeys arc or the typical Shakespeare structure or rising action, climax, flight action, right? Also known as the male orgasm sometimes. But so I think it's a kind of really Western centric like mode of a novel. Like if you read like a Chinese novel, even contemporary ones, like if you read like Yu Hua or something, it's more like this. There's like random events throughout history that keeps it going up and down, right? But then that's like spanning a large amount of time. Usually it's from like Cultural Revolution to like economic reform, right? And then like the story happens in that length. Like so I wonder like what if it's a young person who hasn't lived that long, right? Like what if it's like just a year, like and life is often like that, right? You don't structure your life as like a giant male orgasm. It's more episodic. It's more like little moments that go up and down. And I thought because this is about the lives of these two people, them communicating, not communicating, and falling apart, and getting together and falling apart. The form of it does match like what I'm trying to do. So that made me realize later on that was the reason why I structured it in that way. Thank you.
With Batshit Seven, again on the QR codes, because I think it's really interesting, because again, I hadn't seen it anywhere before. How do you find the both physical and digital sense of the text with the QR codes? Was that meant to like kind of elicit a feeling of bilingualism, like it is both physical and virtual? You have it, like if you're like me, you have the physical copy, you have to take out something to like translate the virtual QR code.
Yeah, I never thought about it that way, but yeah, that's true. You do. Yeah, you do have to translate a QR code, and you can't. You're confronted with like basically a useless object, right? Until you have your phone. Yeah, so yeah, it definitely does that too. Yeah, it also gives another thing that I was thinking was that it gives the reading experience more. You kind of have to experience it rhizomatically, right? There's a paratext that's like juxtaposed against the main text. It doesn't really add anything to it until you go through the motions to actually do it, right? And then I'm just making the reader work at the same time. But I did when I was a resident at Banff, and I was showing like mentors this idea, and one of them linked to a TikTok video, and the person just starts scrolling TikTok instead of continuing to read. So I was like, oh yeah, maybe I should like keep it into one. Yeah. Which also like maybe that's also fine, you know? Yeah. Yeah.
And what's your kind of writing sort of like routine look like? How do you, it's different for everybody, but for you, how do you go about writing, especially, I mean, you say you did a lot of writing during COVID, and when I know a lot of us were at home, it made it a little bit easier to form that routine, but as COVID's kind of dropped off, what's your routine look like now?
Yeah, right now I'm teaching full time, and my course is at 8 a.m., so I have to wake up at 6:30 every day. And then the writing I get done, I don't get a lot of writing done every day, but I after work I nap, I exercise, and then I maybe have like an hour from like 10 to 11 or maybe till midnight in the evening, where as long as I write something, I'm happy. It doesn't even be a lot, it can just be 2 sentences. I'll be like, yeah, I did it. Even if I'm just filling in a form about like an idea of a book that I haven't written yet, like I still feel like, I did something. But I think the point is also to just be like thinking about what you want to work on, right? Like that's still writing. It's not the act of writing, but it's probably more important than the act actually doing my writing sometimes.
Sort of on that point, what sort of inspires you? Like, do you ever just like walk around, see something, and sort of like think about putting that into your story? Like, what sorts of it's like pieces like that?
Yeah, that's yeah. I think for me, I need the concept I want to work on to be clear, and then I would find things that inspire, like lend itself to that concept. Like random things, I have a hard time. I know writers, especially poets, are really good at this. Like they see a tree and they're like, oh, the tree is a mother or something. But I work in a really different way. Yeah, the larger concept comes first, and then I find pieces that fit into that. Yeah, in a way, maybe artists work like that as well, where they know what they're kind of working on, and visually they find references to lend itself to that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Last one from the forum.
Sure.
I guess because we are a creative writing club in university, a lot of us are not published yet. What advice would you give to newer writers, student writers, who are working towards either a bigger novel or a collection of short stories or poetry or anything like that?
Yeah, I think it's helpful. Well, I think actually being in a club is really important. I still have like monthly readings with other writers. We talk about our process. Even if we don't write anything, we still like keep each other updated on like what we're thinking about and what we're reading. Because I think it's hard to, writing is such a solitary task that it's often hard to like practice with a community. And without that, it's hard to be motivated to go forward, regardless of things happen or not. Right? So having friends who you trust and are open to reading your writing and vulnerable enough to share their writing is actually very important in my experience. And also for one summer, I just like submitted to like a literary magazine every week. I didn't care if it was good or not. I was just like, oh, I finished something. I'm gonna send it out. I keep sending it out. I keep sending it out. And then like if you just keep doing it, like one of them will respond. And go like, hey, it's not great, but like here's like 100 edits. Do you want to like try and then we'll see if we can work something out. And so when the first one gets out there and you're kind of like, oh, I have one and I kind of know the process of how to do it, it becomes easier, but it is time consuming to get started. Yeah, thank you. Hi, it's my sister.
Are we expecting a third book?
Yes, maybe in another 4 years. I think I've been working on 4-year intervals, but a fourth. I am thinking. I have the idea for a fourth book, and I say this idea every time that when I get asked it. But it'll be more about returnee diaspora, like people who decide to return back to either where their parents are from or ethnically where they're supposedly from. And so I'm doing more and more research about kind of returning identity and the affects of returning. Like the term return sounds like you're going back somewhere, but like you're actually kind of not. Like what is back? There is no back, and it's just constant displacement, right? And so how does that feel like? And also there's a weird power dynamic that I didn't get explored as much in Batshit, where like as a returnee, you actually, especially if you return to somewhere that was formerly colonized by Western power, you actually are more privileged because you actually are more kind of westernized, right? And so how does one confront that as a returnee? How do you navigate these power dynamics, and how can you be kind of also very honest about this fact, while also like continuing to kind of be part of a community, right? So and there will be more QR codes and hashtags and whatnot in the book. And I'm also thinking about ChatGPT like using a chat, there'll be like footnotes of like the author using ChatGPT to try to recall the memory of before that he had forgotten, and then ChatGPT will fail him, and then it would like make no sense. And so there'll be some prompts involved. Yeah. Yeah. Cool. What have you guys been reading? Anything good?
Final stuff.
Just finals and
Just
just
finals.
textbooks and your notes. I'm so sorry. yeah. Thank you so much for taking the time to come and yeah, I know finals Sunday afternoon, so yeah, thank you so much for taking the time to be here. It was an honor.
Thank you for coming. Thank you very much for coming.
So much.
Do you mind doing a book signing?
Yeah.
If you have the time.
Yeah.
If anybody has copies of either
Yes.
or both,
Okay.
you can hand it